Welcome everyone. Today we have our discussion on this title that we came up with, that I love it. Only mean mommies and devilish daddies sleep train, right? So I was joking on my social media that I would be a mean mommy if this was true. And those who know me, well, I hope you don't categorize me as a mean mommy. My kiddos love me. They're super attached to me. They love going to bed most of the days. Of course, it's normal that some days they don't want to, but they have fond memories about going to bed. They enjoy the process. It's wonderful. And I did sleep train, if you want to call it that. I don't even like those terms, because I don't like the formal definition of training, right? It seems like, oh, I'm training for a marathon, and that's not true. I prefer to say guiding kiddos and babies for a better restful night. So today, after that great title that we came up with, we're going to look at the science behind sleep training. So what's the Academy of Pediatrician, the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatricians, saying about it? What are well-known schools like Duke University, Harvard University, what are their research about? What's their research about sleep training, and what do we know until now? For those who don't know me, I'm Valeria Jasso. I'm a sleep parenting educator and Kinedu sleep expert. My approach is to help parents find the perfect balance between sleep science, what we're going to look at today, and parenting intuition, right? You'll hear it, and today I'm going to address it, right? From research, what do we know until now about sleep, about teaching kids to fall asleep independently, and then there's the side of our parenting intuition and our gut and our feelings and all that sometimes they don't blend together, right? The science and our emotions. So I blend those together, and I help parents find the perfect sweet spot that feels right for you. So let's get started, because this is a hugely debated topic, and I'm so excited to let you know all that we know about it and my approach to it. So how's the agenda gonna look today? We're gonna first discuss those common concerns you might have, like, do I have to sleep train? What are the pros and cons? Are there impact? Is there a negative impact on, their emotional resiliency, their attachment to you if you sleep train, if you let them cry a little bit, right? So we're gonna talk about that first, and then I'm gonna address crying and stress and what the Harvard Center on the Developing Child says about this. Then we're gonna explore my gentle approach to begin to sleep train or guide them to some independent sleep skills. And then I'm going to teach you the starting point. So where can you start, when, and how? Okay. So let's jump into the discussion. First of all, I get a lot of questions. This is like the general question, the first question that gets you into this topic, right? Just wanted to make sure that the video was fine. So parents are like, you get a lot of information, websites, Instagram, Facebook, friends, family, grandparents, right? And you're all confused, like, do I really have to teach my kid to fall asleep independently? Do I have to sleep train? Do I have to go through this? Do I need to? Like, is he not going to write it out if I never teach him to fall asleep independently? right? All those huge concerns that a lot of parents are asking themselves. So I want to address this bigger question first. So let's get clarity around that. Let me tell you, you don't have to. You don't have to sleep train. You don't have to teach your baby to fall asleep independently. The first thing is it an issue for you? There's no right or wrong. Like if your baby is waking up and you're fine going in, rocking or feeding again and getting him to fall asleep quickly and easily, or maybe it takes 20 minutes, but you're fine, then there's no need, right? The need comes when there's something to fix. So first of all, I would address that. Like, stop comparing, close your eyes. And if it feels right for you, and if you wouldn't know any of this outside social pressure or information out there, what would you do? Tune in. Do you feel okay? Bed sharing, sharing a room, nursing your baby to sleep? That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There are studies that demonstrate that there's no impact or difference between kids in the social emotional side or conduct behavior scores between kids that were sleep trained and those who were not sleep trained. So the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, has begun to do research because sleep training is something new, right? With this lifestyle that we're living is not what it used to be maybe 40, 50, 60, even long. You can head even backwards, right? Even more backwards, back into time. We used to live in villages. Babies were born, and we would receive help from grandparents, sisters, aunties, siblings, cousins. We would share the household with huge groups, family members. Nowadays, our family. Sorry, my throat's feeling a bit dry. So nowadays our families are a bit smaller, or even if you do have larger families with lots of relatives in the household, most people don't live with huge families, right? With grandparents, sisters, cousins, blah, 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 right? And there's parents are going to work. There's a need to work. So babies are meant to be with us and to be held and to be rocked. And there's a need. They're so dependent on us when they're born. But now the way that we live in our lifestyle demands this separation. So it's normal that, hey, my baby can't sleep, right? They need my help. Well, that's normal. It's just that our lifestyle has changed. So that's why it begins to become so difficult to get your baby to sleep. And you need more hands, more help due to the way that we're living, right? So because of this, parents end up teaching their babies to sleep independently. So that's a legitimate need, right? If you need your baby to fall asleep independently because you need to do X or you can't do Y, right? And you want to. So defining the why you want to do this, it's a legitimate reason. And that's why parents are now, and it's a new topic because there's a need for babies to sleep longer stretches, so sleep independently. So the parents are able to do other stuff, right? So that's valid. So that's the first thing I want to address, right? If you're having second thoughts, if you're doubting, like, do I have to, do I need to? You don't need to. If things are going well for you, that's wonderful. But if you're like, yeah, I want to, but I don't know if this is going to traumatize my baby, if this is going to impact their attachment on me, if down the road they're going to I don't know, hate sleeping or remember that I left them to, I didn't respond. Well, first of all, let me tell you that my approach is not a cry it out approach. It's a responsive approach. So you will respond, right? You will be there to guide your baby to fall asleep more independently, right? In a gentle and gradual manner. It's not like, okay, I'm going to lock the door and you figure it out completely on your own and see you tomorrow, right? So if you're in that camp, you're like, okay, I do want to sleep train, but I'm still like concerned about what do we know? As I mentioned, there's research from the AAP, and they've been doing studies. For example, this study that I'm citing here, they did a big study on infants 6 months plus that were taught to fall asleep independently as a double blind. The researchers did not know which babies were sleep trained and received sleep training indications. And they followed them for 5 years. So after 5 years, again, they addressed and they answered some questions. The kids, where they were kids now and when they were 5, right, that received gentle sleep training methods, they didn't show any difference between those who were sleep trained and those who were not. So on the emotional side, there were no difference. They were still attached emotionally to their caregivers. Behavior scores were equivalent as well. So it was not like, oh, this kid is acting this way because he was sleep trained. So there was no correlation with their behavior either. And there was no disinhibited attachment. So these kids were still attached to their caregiver, primary parent, right? So in this research, it demonstrated that there's no negative impact on babies that were sleep trained and taught to sleep independently. The conclusion that the AAP gives here is that parents and health professionals can confidently use these techniques. Okay, so it's backed up. If you're concerned about it, they're doing some research, right? So I want to. There will be, when you teach your baby to fall asleep independently, there will be some crying. And if you have a baby, well, there will be some crying anyways, right? They cry when they're hungry. And are you concerned like, oh my God, they can't cry because they're hungry, right? Well, when they're crying to fall asleep, it's a way of communicating the need. They're crying because they're tired, right? Because they want to fall asleep. They're communicating a need, just like when they cry when they're hungry, right? And maybe, one of those needs could be also that they want a cue for proximity, right? And I'll guide you through some steps later on after I address the crying the crying topic first. But I'll address to you how to approach a gentle way to be responsive and be there, right? So what's the research on crying and stress? And I want to get it out there right now to you guys. Why? Because if you have very young babies, it's a huge tool for you to understand why babies cry. And if they cry and they're going through a stressful period, it's very important for you to know the impact of the crying, right? Is what happens if you respond, if you don't respond, and which cries and levels of stress do have impact, right, on their brain architecture. Okay, so you'll understand what's happening when they cry, and you'll know that if there will be or there won't be any significant impact on their architecture, on their brain architecture. So this comes from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child. We have 3 categories of stress: positive stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. Okay, so when babies cry, they are experiencing some kind of stress, right? They're cute and they're like, hey, mommy, I need my milk. I want you to change my diaper, right? There's an increasement on their stress levels, right? Because they have a need. So first of all, let's talk about the positive stress, right? These are categorized as brief increases in the heart rate, mild elevations in the stress hormone levels, right? So cortisol, adrenaline, right? All those hormones that are natural and good for us, right? For our survival instincts, they increase, right? And because the baby is experiencing a need. What are some examples of a positive stress response for a baby? It's starting daycare. When they start daycare, well, it's a bit stressful. They're getting to know a new caregiver, a new place, right? They are facing separation from you, from the parent. Another example, so you're like aware of like day-to-day things that you might go through that your baby's going experiencing positive stress after getting a shot, right? You obviously want your baby immunizations going, right? And they get the shot while they're crying, right? They that hurts, right? So they're going through positive stress there. And let me tell you, this is a part of healthy development. So how do we learn resiliency? How do we learn to adapt? How do we build up on our emotional resiliency? It's through positive stress. We need to go, our hormone levels need to rise, experience that stress level, either adapt or respond and resolve that issue, and then we get back down on our homeostasis, our equanimous state of equanimity, and so that's how we learned to respond, to be resilient, right? We want our babies and our kids to go through positive stress. We want them to go through this. We support them, and we get them. We get those hormone and stress levels back down, right? That's how we learn. Now let's jump into the second category. We have tolerable stress. This is a bit more serious. The temporary stress is more temporary stress responses, right? But they're buffered by supportive relationships. This is the ultimate research that Harvard University is preaching out, that they're getting out to the crowds, is that the research demonstrates that even if you go through trauma, facing huge like the loss of a loved one or something very, very difficult to handle emotionally, physically, etc. When supported by relationships with secure attachment, these tolerable instances of stress, they are buffered and they are ameliorated by a responsive relationship. Isn't that wonderful? Like, how beautiful is that, right? And the research also demonstrates that when kids or babies have a strong relationship, this could be with a teacher, with a grandparent, with mom, with dad, obviously, but it can extend to any other adult, right? So these moments of stress, they are, a kid is able to go through difficult moments in life. They're able to be very resilient and have a huge drive to go into the unknown and those scary moments when they feel uncomfortable, and they are adventurous and willing to go through risks when they feel supported. So even if they go through tolerable stress and they have a strong relationship that's buffering it, they are able to be super resilient. And then we have our last category, which is toxic stress. So what is toxic stress? It is, oh wait, I wanted to share the examples of tolerable stress. So the loss of a loved one, right? Maybe if, I think in this category, yeah, it was in this category, natural disasters. If you go through a natural disaster or a 9/11 or something that did impact your baby or your lifestyle for a few years, months, that's considered tolerable stress. Now let's jump into the toxic category. So this is more prolonged. Okay, and this is a prolonged activation of the stress response in the absence of protective relationships. So you see here the difference between toxic and tolerable is the part of relationship. So intolerable stress, even if the trauma or the economic hardship is prolonged, it's going through, you live in a situation that's really hard. If there's a supportive relationship, it's buffered, right? It's ameliorated. In toxic stress, there's no protective relationship to help this situation. I love it. Like, seriously, it's like, it makes everything like so beautiful, doesn't it? You can have these hardships and these really tough things that are inevitable to happen in life, but if you have a wonderful relationship, wonderful bond with your kids, you get to make better like improve all this negative impact that these situations might have. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. Maybe it's because I have kids and I'm like, oh, okay, I can hug them and things will get better if I focus on relationship. I love that. Okay, well, maybe I'm diverging now. Let me get back to this topic. We were in toxic stress. So toxic stress is chronic neglect. So you see here, the relationship is not there. It's ongoing. You're not responding. Baby's abandoned, etc. So there's lack of adequate support from the caregiver. So why am I talking about crying and stress and these three types of categories that the Harvard Center has information on? Because when you begin to guide your baby to fall asleep more independently, there will be some crying. And I want you guys to take in this information, and you can categorize the stress that your baby is going through while you're there as positive stress. Your baby might cry because, oh, mommy, like, ooh, I used to sleep in your arms and now I'm sleeping in a mattress. Like, mommy, come on, this is a huge change I'm going through. Like, help me, right? But you're there, you're supported, you are guided by a coach, you are really going into his sleep needs, right? And trying to figure out the schedule, right? You're not just leaving your baby out there and not responding. So if you keep reminding yourself that the stress and the crying that your babies are going through is a positive stress. You can compare it to going to daycare, right? The separation is hard for babies or kids. Most of them, there's some of them that like, ooh, they jump off your car and they're so happy, and then the parents are the ones that cry, right? They're like, oh my God, my baby didn't cry when I left him, right? And then there's babies like that when you begin to teach them independent sleep skills that they don't even cry or express any need when you're like, oh, ooh, this happened all on its own, right? Okay, but let's look at the larger camp of the vast majority of kids that they do cry a bit, right? When we're facing separation. And if you're there to support them, well, even if you want to categorize teaching them how to sleep independently as a tolerable stress, which is a bit more temporary if it's been ongoing for more time, it's buffered by supportive relationships. Your baby's going to wake up and he's going to love you, and you're going to be there, and he's going to be attached to you, right? You have to look at the bigger picture and the reason why you're doing this, okay? There was something in the chat. Oh, that's so cute. Thank you. I love that. Thank you for that, Lauren. I'm a mom of 3. I really want to get this information out there. I went through hard things myself with my first kid, and still go through the ups and downs of parenthood. And I've learned so much that I want to preach out to all the parents out there. So that's really wonderful. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, so now let me jump into the next section. Yeah, take advantage of the chat if you want to write down any questions that come up while I'm talking, and I can address them at the end. So I want to address other common concerns that parents have about teaching kids to fall asleep independently, right? And sleep related. This research comes from Duke Pediatrics, so it's a well-known university. And these are questions I get from the parents I help as well. And so I really liked the article there, and I wanted to share it with you today. So first of all, there's a lot of parents that they're going through hard times to get their baby to fall asleep, but they're like, my baby will grow out of it. Yes and no. So maybe. So yeah, maybe your baby's gonna grow out of it. What I always tell parents going through this, what feels right for you? Are you okay with handling a few rough nights? Okay, if you keep this mantra inside of your head and you keep repeating, okay, this might improve in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, or I'm gonna set myself a time limit, like, okay, I'm gonna support him the way I do my thing and you do your thing for 3 weeks, a month. Okay, but then stop giving yourself such a hard time by saying, oh my God, this shouldn't be happening, or my kids shouldn't be having a hard time, because you yourself decided to support your baby for 3 months, whatever, right? I don't want you to, right? I get parents that they're like, yeah, my baby's gonna write it out, but I'm having such a hard time. Well, if you are having a hard time, then you have to make a change. You have to do something different. But if you're deciding not to make a change and write it out, then stop. You know where I'm going to? Stop telling yourself that you're doing something wrong because it's a decision coming from your own, right? From your own gut that you decided to wait it out. Okay, so what the research demonstrates on, will my kid grow out of it? Well, yeah, but it could be until college. Okay, so your kid might want to come to your bed, and it's demonstrated in different ways, right? Maybe when they're younger, they want to be rocked, they want to be held, but then they start growing, and maybe now it's demonstrated as nightmares, or they don't want to face depression, or they don't want to go to summer camp because sleeping on their own is such a huge deal, right? So there's way to address it early on and help them have a secure and a good approach to sleep, right? To sleeping and falling asleep. So that's, will my kid grow out of it? Well, maybe. Okay. But if you're concerned, let's get things going. Let's make a change, right? The definition of insanity is wanting a change to happen, right, without doing anything, right? If you like, oh, I want this coffee to be cold, but I'm still drinking it. Well, if you want it to be cold, get some ice in it, right? Like, do something about it. I don't know. I just came up with that example there with seeing my mug. Okay, so next common concern: isn't sleep training for the benefit of the parent? Oh, I get it a lot. Like, you're so egocentric, right? You just think about you yourself, that you want to sleep better because you want. Well, let me tell you, parents that don't sleep well, they're less responsive. Your stress levels are high because if we don't sleep, we have adrenaline, cortisol, high rocketing. When you're stressed, maybe like a small cry, you're like, oh, I don't want. You don't want to respond to your baby, or you're so tired. Instead of, like, if you're rested, you might be doing a whole Kinedu development activity, and you would be excited about it and getting the materials and everything done because you had a wonderful, restful night, right? So it's for both. And it has a great impact on both the parent and the kid and the baby, right? And the benefit, there's huge benefits for babies as well, right? When they don't know how to fall asleep independently and they need rocking or their presence, whatever, right? Sometimes those associations stop working. I don't mind. I really, if parents want to consult with me and they're rocking, we first work on schedule and see if even if you rock, even if you nurse to sleep, you can get a wonderful sleeper, right? There's babies that are able to fall asleep with that dependent sleep association and have longer stretches overnight, and it's wonderful. But if it's no longer working and your baby overnight it takes you 30 minutes and he's crying and you're still rocking, well, that's a cue of we need to create some changes, right? It's no longer working. And for your baby, if you teach them to be able to grab the pacifier or their lovey or roll around or be able to fall asleep on their own again, well, those large overnight wakings are not going to be so prolonged. They're going to be shorter. They're going to be quicker. Overnight are going to be more restful. They're going to go through all the sleep cycles that are needed for better sleep, and your baby will benefit so much from this. So yeah, there's benefits from the parent, but hey, like, we want to be happy parents, right? That's a legitimate need. And there's benefits for the kid too, right? So you're not being egocentric. Maybe you have a valid need to work, right? And if you are over your being woken up every hour and you're not sleeping, well, the next day you're not able to function. So there's ways to teach your babies to fall asleep more independently with a gradual approach, right? A lot of parents are also concerned that, oh, I want a bed share or room share, and if I teach them to fall asleep independently, well, we need a different room, or they need to sleep in a different location. No, that's not true. You can still share a room. There's ways to teach them, even if you are sharing a bed, and they can sleep longer, right? For longer stretches. So you don't have to go to another room. And then crying it out, right? CIO, you see it a lot everywhere. I wanted to address this because there's a lot of concerns out there. So does sleep training always involve crying it out? No. Even the research that I shared with you earlier, it wasn't done on kids that went through cried out. They were gentle approaches, right? So your parents were responsive. So there are responsive approaches that I will be teaching you. Okay. So again, what feels right for you? What feels right for you, right? To zone in to the answer that you want to get for your family, right? If you're like, Valeria, what are you saying? I hate science. I don't like the research. I'm still concerned about my baby. Well, then rock him. But be happy with it. Like, right? Remove all those doubts and all the shoulds. I should be doing this, but I shouldn't be doing that. Oh, there's a green lizard out there. Okay, so that's the main point here. Now let's talk about the gentle approach I've been mentioning previously, right? There are responsive and based on developmental needs, ways that you can guide your baby to fall asleep more independently, right? I always tell parents, you're a parent by day, you're a parent by night. It's not like a switch, right? You're like off. Maybe you wished you could turn off at night, but no, we're still parents. There's no difference, right? Our kids have needs overnight as well, right? So we can respond and they can learn to fall asleep on their own. First of all, if you wanna, I'm gonna introduce it really briefly because that's the main topic of today's chat was that huge, hotly debated topic on whether you should sleep train. You have to, and if you don't, your baby will sleep very badly forever, right? All those questions that we already addressed, and just guide you through the way I approach beginning to teach babies to sleep independently. But there will be another video more on the details on this, okay? So first of all, if you want to, now you're convinced, right? Or you have a need, right? Your baby, for you, it's not enough that he's sleeping X hours, right? And you want your baby to sleep a bit more, you're concerned about their sleep totals, etc. First of all, let's define your kid's appropriate schedule. You can jump into my website. Let me show you, because sleep/parenting, and you go to resources, sleep schedules. Now these are averages, right? I don't want you to have a really hard time. And let's jump into, I talked about the 6 months in the other video, so I don't know, let's jump to 8 months. They're averages, right? Your baby won't sleep this way day to day, identical, and there's nothing wrong, right? But anchoring your baby's naps and the times they wake up or fall asleep, it regulates their internal clock that regulates sleep. So you can get their bodies used to falling asleep. And there's research on these averages tend to be more relatable on babies 6 months plus. So if you compare a baby from one baby to another, if you have sleep hygiene and your baby's falling asleep on their own, most parents tend to fit into these schedules. Now, if your baby wakes up earlier, well, you modify, right? There's nothing wrong if your baby wakes up at 6, or maybe you're those lucky ones that wake up at 8. You just, you bump you add 1 hour to all those suggested schedules, right? So these are suggested. So you're going to jump into the website and then search here on resources, sleep schedules, and then jump into your baby's age, and you can begin to follow a schedule. That's the first step. Why? I love science, and first we need homeostasis. So this is a sleep drive, our sleep pressure. We don't have this pressure to fall asleep, well, your baby's not going to fall asleep, right? So first we regulate that, and with an appropriate schedule, it regulates their internal clock. So you begin to, even if you're rocking, you're nursing, you're doing your thing. You get their bodies used to falling asleep at a certain time, right? That's the first step. And then after that, you can give that a go for a week, 3-4, a week or 2 weeks, 3-4 days, maybe if you're those like a bit more desperate. And then you begin your night one, right? I don't want you to randomly choose a day and you're like, okay, I love bedtime happening at 7 p.m. So that's how it should be in my household. Well, no. If your baby's falling asleep is used to falling asleep at 8, then choose your bedtime accordingly. And even if you would love your baby to fall asleep at 7, but if his body is used to falling asleep at 8, and that's what it usually happens. If you put him down at 7, he's going to cry for a whole hour, right? So we want to get that timing right. So you can jot it down, notepad, phone, whatever you use, and begin to see that pattern. And then if you see that your baby's falling asleep at around 7:30, 8, so then choose that time, right? And then you're going to choose a day when your baby had good naps, right? We don't want them to be overtired. So even if in that morning you're like, yay, today I'm going to teach support my baby to fall asleep a bit more independently, but then your baby has 2 20-minute naps and is super cranky come bedtime, throw it off and choose another day. Okay, it's super important. We don't want an overtired baby that increases the crying, right? Choose a day that you will be home for a few days as well, that no major changes are happening. So I get a lot of parents like, oh, my baby's starting daycare in two days and I want him to fall asleep independently for naps because I don't want him to have a hard time at daycare, so help me. I'm like, well, we have 2 days. Like, can you run a marathon in 2 days? I don't think so, right? So we need time. We need time for babies to practice, and gentle approaches take more time as well, right? For babies to learn. So it's normal. So choose plan ahead if big changes are coming, like if you're moving or you're concerned about a trip or something. Let's plan ahead and choose like 2 weeks before those big changes or 2 weeks after those big changes happened. And you want to be home for a few days, right? You don't want to travel the next day, right? You want your baby practicing for a few weeks at the same location. And now, okay, I want to briefly, as I mentioned, there will be another video on more details on this, but I want to briefly introduce you to my pyramid of support, because you're like, okay, my baby should sleep on his own. I leave him and I leave, or what do I do, right? If we're not practicing cry it out, you can be there. You can support them. First of all, I ask parents, what's more helpful? Is it helpful for your baby or kiddo for you to be in the room or to be out of the room? You can do checks, you can come in, but if he's more stressed by your presence, then decide to be outside of the room, right? So there's two roads. You can choose the in the room or out of the room, right? You decide to stay there. That night, your first night, your goal, I didn't write that, right? Yeah, no. Your goal is for your baby to fall asleep in the new location without the association you're trying to remove. That's it. Even if it took 1 hour, even if you picked him up 20 times, maybe he didn't cry at all because you were there, because you picked him up, because you put him down, because you patted, because you shushed, because you sang, because you kissed him, because you did everything, but he ended up falling asleep, even if it took him an hour. I don't want you to focus on the clock on the first night. I want you to focus on that single goal, your baby sleeping on his own in a different location, That's the goal, right? And you're gonna applaud to yourself. You're gonna do your magic dance when you leave your baby's room, and you're gonna be so excited about it and motivated to do a night 2. Okay. So what's the pyramid of support? You're going to put your baby down on night 1 at an appropriate time. Remember, we talked about sleep drive earlier. And then this runs down from more supportive, more help to less. Okay, so from more to less. What's more supportive? You can pick your baby's crying, needs a little help. You can pick him up, pat him, hold him, get his stress level lower, and then you can put him back down. And then he starts crying again, and you can pick him up again. And I don't mind if you picked him up 50 times. Okay. The next section of support is your touch. So you can pat him. Some babies just with your hand and the weight of your hand, they feel comfortable and they like it, right? So you can be even trying to get in the crib or holding a lot of babies like holding fingers, right? You can hold your baby, they can hold you, you can pat, so use your healing hands. You're super powerful. That's step number 2. Number 3 is your voice. You can sing, you can talk, you can tell a story. Depends on the age, right? But you can be and use this wonderful sense to your advantage and soothe your baby with your voice, a song, a story, right? And then number 4 is your presence, right? So this section is either if you were in the room, well, yeah, your presence. If you decided to go out of the room, I want you to do checks. So going in and out, and again, don't focus on the time. I know out there's a lot of information on the Ferber method, and you should increase 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? In gradual increments. I don't recommend that to my clients. You don't fixate your eyes on the clock, but rather on how your baby's responding. Maybe you go out of the room and he's fine for 15 minutes. Don't go in 5 minutes. There's no need. All right, you can wait, but what feels right for your baby and for you, that's the most important. Okay, so and then you if you want to move forwards and your goal is for your baby to sleep more independently, well, you gradually move down the pyramid. Okay, so from your presence to pickups to touch to your singing, your voice, and your presence. And that's the way I help parents gradually teach their babies to fall asleep a bit more independently. Another thing I want to mention out there is if you have younger babies, 4, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, then 8 months, they get really smart by that age. But before the 4-month mark to the 8-month mark, they can't really concentrate on a lot of the senses. So this is wonderful. They're crying, you want to grab their attention by your voice, and then they can be concentrated on your voice, and you'll be able to gradually transfer them while you're singing, because they're like, ooh, look at mommy's lips and her voice is so sweet, and they can't focus on too many things at the same time. Or maybe the movement, right, or the padding, and that gets them distracted. So it's a really helpful tool to use, right? Grab their attention by using a different sense. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining, and see you soon on another sleep video.